There is a quiet kind of power that moves mountains, not through thunder, but through patience, not through noise, but through knowing. And once you learn to hold your peace and pour that same energy back into yourself, the world cannot help but shift in your favor. There is a silence that stings, and then there is a silence that sings. The world often mistakes them for the same thing. But those who have walked through storms without needing to shout about the rain know the difference. They understand that silence, real silence, is not born from weakness. It is born from wisdom. We have been taught that being silent means being submissive, that those who speak the least are the ones who lack courage. But that belief comes from confusion. The kind of silence I speak of is not the silence of fear. It is the silence of knowing, the quiet that lives inside the soul of someone who no longer needs to prove, to please, or to perform. It is the deliberate calm of a person who has learned to protect their peace. Anyone can make noise. It is not difficult to raise your voice, to throw your energy into the air and demand recognition. But power, real power, does not shout. It does not need to announce itself. It doesn't scream to be seen. It simply is. And in that being, there is a strength that does not depend on reaction. There is a kind of dignity in silence that the loudest person in the room will never understand. To be silent is not to disappear. It is to reappear within yourself. It is to gather your energy where it truly matters. While others chase applause and approval, you chase clarity. While others drown in noise, you step into still waters and find that you are not lost at all. You are free. You are grounded. You are in control. Some will question your silence. They will try to interpret it, define it, even destroy it. They may call you cold, arrogant, distant. But what they do not know is that you have chosen silence, not because you are empty, but because you are full. Full of reflection, full of awareness, full of a self-respect that no longer wishes to be wasted on battles not worth fighting. And yes, there will be times when silence is mistaken for passivity. When you choose not to respond, not to explain, not to defend, some will call you weak. Let them, because you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to understand yourself, and that understanding is the greatest form of strength. Silence becomes a sanctuary when the world grows loud. It becomes a mirror when others try to twist your reflection. In silence, you can hear your own voice clearer than the opinions of others. You can sort through the chaos and find your truth, the kind of truth that isn't shaped by gossip, by trends, or by pressure. Silence teaches you timing. It teaches you when to speak, how to speak, and more importantly, whether something even deserves your response. Some battles don't need your sword. Some insults don't deserve your name. And when you react to everything, you lose a piece of yourself. But when you choose your moments, you become unforgettable. Not because you always spoke, but because when you did, the world stopped to listen. There is no weakness in saving your energy. There is no shame in letting others fill the room with noise while you sit still, steady and rooted. That is not retreat. That is refinement. That is quiet revolution. The kind that doesn't need to be displayed or advertised. We live in a culture that glorifies what's instant, what's loud, what's always available. But not everything needs an immediate answer. Growth, healing, transformation, they take time, and they happen in silence. A seed does not shout as it grows under the soil. The moon does not scream to outshine the sun. They simply rise in their own time, in their own rhythm, with their own grace. So the next time someone tries to pull you into a storm that isn't yours, remember, your silence is not surrender. It is selection. It is strategy. You are not ignoring them, you are honoring yourself. Silence, when chosen, is brilliance. It sharpens your thoughts, softens your heart, and guards your spirit. It tells the world, I am not here for your noise. I am here for my peace. And in a world that feeds on distraction, nothing is stronger than focus. Nothing is more radical than restraint. And nothing is more graceful than knowing when to speak and when to simply rise in silence. There comes a time when you look around and realize that giving all your time, your love, and your energy to others has left you drained. Not because you lack the ability to give, but because you have forgotten that you too deserve to receive. You were never meant to serve others from an empty cup. You were meant to fill that cup with purpose, peace, and passion. And if there is overflow, let it bless others. But the filling must come first. To focus on yourself is not selfish. It is sacred. It is to honor the vessel that carries your dreams, your pain, your potential. It is to look at yourself and say, I matter too. That is not pride. That is self-respect, and it's long overdue. Too often we are taught that to be good, we must give ourselves away. That love means sacrifice, that strength means carrying everyone even when we're falling. But love, true love, includes you too. It includes your rest, your boundaries, your growth. And if it doesn't, it isn't love, it's performance. You don't owe the world your constant availability. You don't need to justify why you're choosing to sit in silence, why you're turning off your phone, or why you're not answering calls that bring only confusion and chaos. That's not rudeness. That's wisdom. That's alignment. That's self-respect wearing its quiet crown silence. When you start focusing on yourself, the world will react. It will ask why you've changed. It will miss the version of you always said yes, who showed up even when it hurt, who gave endlessly but asked for little. But you are not here to live as a memory of who others preferred you to be. You are here to live as the truth of who you are becoming. And truth requires space. It needs time, patience, and quiet care. When you choose to focus on yourself, you'll see that not every hand deserves your touch. Not every voice deserves your reply. Not every invitation is an opportunity. Some are distractions dressed as praise. Some are detours pretending to be destiny. And when you respect yourself enough to say no, you begin to see how peace returns like a long-lost friend. There is dignity in choosing yourself. There is healing in saying, I will no longer abandon myself to make others comfortable. Because every time you betray your own needs and ignore your instincts, you teach yourself that you come second. And you do not. You are the beginning of every story you will ever write. You are the soil from which your dreams must grow. And if you don't water that soil, it will dry. No matter how many flowers you try to give to the world, people may praise your petals, but you will feel the thirst beneath the beauty, and one day it will show. So take time with yourself. Be still enough to hear your own heart beneath the world's noise. Be gentle enough to hold your own hand. You don't need to rush into fixing others. You don't need to apologize for slowing down, for starting again, for taking your time. This is your life, and you are allowed to live it at your own rhythm. Some will call you distant. Let them. Some will say you've changed. Thank them. Growth isn't always loud, but it is always intentional. When you grow inward, the world around you begins to shift with that same strength. Your self-focus is not selfishness, it is preservation. It is transformation. In a world that wants you distracted and dependent, choosing yourself is the loudest declaration of freedom you can make. You are saying, I am enough. I am worthy of love. I will not wait for someone to see my light before I let it shine. Focus on yourself. Not because others don't matter, but because you cannot give clarity from confusion. You cannot share light while sitting in your own shadow. And when you start to treat yourself as someone worth showing up for, everything changes. The more you respect yourself, the less room you have for disrespect. The more time you give yourself, the more time you find for what really matters. And in the end, you'll see that focusing on yourself was never selfish. It was sacred. Growth is a quiet miracle. It doesn't announce itself with noise or demand attention. It doesn't ask for applause. It begins softly, hidden, like a seed stirring in darkness before it rises into light. The world celebrates what's visible, the performance, the result, but true growth lives in the unseen. It lives in the nights when no one is watching, when you sit with your questions, your pain, your hope. It lives in the moments when you choose to pause instead of react, to feel instead of flee, to breathe instead of break. That's where real transformation happens, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows where strength is born. There is something sacred about the quiet that holds your becoming. It isn't emptiness, it's presence. A presence that listens deeply, that allows what's inside you to rise without force. When life is loud, we move fast and lose ourselves. But in the stillness, we meet who we really are. You cannot rush a seed by shouting at it. You cannot push a flower to bloom before its time. The same is true for your healing, your purpose, your becoming. It needs stillness. It needs safety. It needs faith in the unseen. Many people give up on their growth because they can't see results right away. They want to skip the quiet and go straight to the success. But fruit never grows before roots. And roots grow in darkness. They reach deep into places unseen, building strength where no one looks. If you skip that stage, you rise too fast and fall too soon. We are meant to grow in seasons, some full of action, some full of silence. But silence is not emptiness. It's preparation. It's cleansing. It's the breath before the breakthrough. You may feel behind because your journey is quiet, because no one notices, because the world isn't clapping. But don't mistake silence for stagnation. The strongest things grow without witnesses. A mountain doesn't need applause to rise. A tree doesn't need validation to stretch toward light. They simply do, and so do you. In today's world, everyone feels the urge to announce their progress, to show proof of becoming. But real growth doesn't need proof. It shows itself when it's ready. And when the world finally sees it, the roots have already been growing for years. So let people wonder where you went. Let them question your quiet. You don't owe proof. You owe yourself patience. Some of your greatest transformations will happen so softly that only your soul will know. Stay in that quiet. Stay in that space where healing and strength are born. Let the noise pass. Let the world hurry. You are not behind. You are becoming. You are doing the most sacred work a soul can do, growing roots that no storm can shake. There is a hunger in this world, one that grows louder with every scroll and swipe. It's not a hunger of the body, but of the soul. A longing to be seen, to be validated, to be acknowledged. And many chase that feeling without realizing it cannot be fed by attention. Attention is like sugar. It gives a rush but leaves the spirit starving. The desire to be noticed is not wrong. It is human. But when you learn to find peace in being unseen, when you learn to glow quietly without needing eyes upon you, that is where true freedom begins. Because the light that doesn't depend on recognition never burns out. But when it becomes your food, when it becomes your direction, you begin to lose yourself. You start shaping a version of you that's easier for others to accept. You water down your truth to fit into frames and filters. You shrink or stretch yourself to match someone else's image of who you should be. And in all that effort to be seen, you slowly disappear from your own view. Attention is a drug. And like any drug, it gives you a quick high that fades fast. It feeds your doubts while pretending to heal them. It builds a false identity, one that depends on likes, comments, and applause. But the moment those stop coming, you start to question your worth. You begin to wonder, was I ever enough without the noise of the crowd? Sobriety from attention isn't easy. It means stepping away from the noise. It means sitting in the silence where your only reflection is truth. Not praise, not opinions, not the edited versions of life people show the world. And in that quiet, in that sobriety, you finally learn to face yourself. Not the self others cheer for, Not the self dressed up for attention, but the one who exists when the screens go dark and the room goes still. The hardest thing about letting go of attention is the loneliness that comes next. Because for a time you might feel forgotten. The world doesn't reward quiet growth. It rewards being seen. But being seen isn't the same as being valuable. And being present online isn't the same as being truly alive. Some of the most grounded, glowing people are the ones you never see because they've chosen depth over display. Sobriety teaches you that your worth isn't a group decision. It isn't up for vote. It doesn't depend on how many people are watching. You start to see that peace doesn't come from being noticed. It comes from being real. You find joy in the small, unseen victories. The day you kept a promise to yourself. The morning you woke up and didn't need a stranger's approval to feel complete. The night you chose rest and quiet over one more post, just to remind the world you exist. In that stillness, you start to create differently. You begin to live not for applause but from honesty. You stop measuring the power of your words by their reaction and start valuing them by how true they feel in your soul. And when you speak, your words carry power, not because they're loud, but because they come from a place that doesn't ask for permission. The world will try to pull you back. It will offer you another taste, another chance to be seen, to be praised. But you will know, you'll feel the shift in your spirit, the unease in your body, because once you've known the peace of being enough without the noise, the crowd begins to feel like a cage. You'll see people chasing attention and recognize the ache beneath their show. You'll hold compassion, not judgment, because you've been there. You've stood on that stage, hoping the lights would warm you, only to find they cast shadows when they go out. You've known the silence that follows applause, and you've lived through it. More than that, you've grown within it. And growth, real growth, doesn't crave an audience. It craves connection, first with yourself, then with what is real, what is steady, what doesn't fade when the followers leave or the trends change. You'll start to crave conversations that don't begin with, "Look at me," but with, "Let me know you." You'll want a life that feels full without needing to be watched. The drug of attention makes you believe that more eyes mean more value. But the truth is, the most meaningful things you'll ever do might never be seen. And that's okay. Because when you choose sobriety from attention, you don't lose your shine. You simply stop needing someone else to turn on the light. Boundaries don't always come with big declarations. Sometimes they arrive quietly, wrapped in silence. Sometimes the strongest thing you can say is nothing at all. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but from understanding. When you stop explaining, stop arguing, stop seeking approval from those who will never truly hear you, that's not giving up. That's wisdom. That's choosing peace over permission. The silence where boundaries grow isn't empty. It's full of intention. It's the kind of silence that comes when you've said it all before. When your voice has stretched too thin trying to hold up other people's comfort. It's the silence that says, "This time, I choose me." Not in a way that withholds love from others, but in a way that stops withholding love from yourself. There comes a moment when you see that every time you say yes out of guilt, every time you let someone cross your line out of habit, you're teaching yourself to live smaller than you were created to be. And in that quiet realization, something powerful begins to form. Not bitterness, but strength. Not distance, but direction. You don't owe everyone an explanation for your boundaries. You don't owe your silence an apology. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can do for them, and for yourself, is to step back, to pause, to become unavailable to what drains you. And in that sacred space, you start rebuilding the walls that protect the garden of your soul. People might not like your silence. They may feel they deserve your time, your energy, your attention, especially if they've become used to your constant yes. But your healing doesn't require their agreement. Your peace doesn't depend on their comfort. The silence that shapes your boundaries isn't cruel. It's careful. It's the kind of care that says, I finally see what I need, and I won't ignore it anymore. In the quiet, you start to separate what's yours to carry from what never belonged to you. You begin sorting through all the expectations, the emotional debts, the roles you accepted but never chose. And with every new awareness, a line is drawn, not to keep love away, but to invite self-respect in. The beauty of boundaries isn't in what they push out, but in what they allow to grow. When you stop overextending, you start to restore. When you stop explaining yourself to people who choose not to understand, you begin to hear yourself again. In that silence, your voice returns, not loud but sure. It reminds you what you need, where your yes holds value, and that no is a complete answer. Some will mistake your boundaries for distance. Let them. Some will call you cold or uncaring. Let them. Your boundary isn't about them. It's about your becoming. You aren't withdrawing in anger. You're returning to your center. And from that grounded place, everything that's meant for you will find you without having to disturb your peace. The silence where boundaries are born is a wise teacher. It shows you who respects your limits and who only loved your access. It reveals which connections were built on balance and which on convenience. And though those truths may sting, they're needed, because you can't grow in soil that's constantly stepped on. You can't bloom in spaces where your needs are seen as burdens. In silence, you start choosing differently. You learn that love which costs you yourself isn't love. It's self-abandonment. You understand that guarding your energy isn't selfish. It's sacred. And you realize no one can respect your boundaries if you're too afraid to set them. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's simply not answering the call, not replying to the message, not walking into spaces where you were once expected to quietly bleed. You begin living less from obligation and more from alignment. And as your silence deepens, your sense of self grows stronger. You no longer need to shout your worth. You simply act like someone who knows it, and the world adjusts. The peace that follows this kind of quiet isn't the lack of noise. It's the presence of self. It's knowing that you're allowed to guard what's sacred inside you. It's realizing that your time, your space, your energy, your happiness, none of it is disposable. And the ones who truly love you will never make you feel like it is. There comes a moment when the crowd drifts away. When the noise fades, the spotlight dims, and the applause becomes a memory. At first, that silence feels like loss, like something in you has gone unseen. But if you stay still long enough, if you resist begging the world to look again, something soft begins to rise. You start seeing yourself clearly, maybe for the very first time, because true transformation doesn't need witnesses. It needs honesty. It needs space to break down the parts of you built from fear and approval and reveal the pieces that were always genuine, always sacred, waiting quietly beneath. Real change doesn't happen when you're performing. It doesn't bloom under pressure to appear perfect. It begins when you stop trying to impress and start the real work of becoming. You'll know you're close to transformation when everything familiar stops working. When the ways you used to cope stop soothing you. When the roles you've played begin to feel too tight, too false, too rehearsed. That discomfort isn't punishment. It's a message. It's life pulling you deeper. And it's not a coincidence that this happens when no one's watching. The soul doesn't heal in public. It heals in solitude. It needs stillness to see itself again. In the quiet, there's a kind of shedding. You start releasing what you once clung to for identity. The titles, the reactions, the validation. At first it feels like loss, but soon it feels like freedom. Because when you're no longer performing, you realize you are free to be whole. Not perfect, not polished, just whole. It's easy to confuse attention with connection, but when the spotlight moves, you're left to face what's real. That's when true work begins. You learn to speak gently to yourself without needing anyone to echo it. You learn to calm your fears without turning them into a post. You learn to grow quietly without turning healing into a show. The world might call it disappearing, but it's really becoming. You're not fading, you're returning. You're meeting the parts of yourself buried under noise and fear. And in that rediscovery, you find something beautiful. Your growth was never meant to entertain, it was meant to free you. The world teaches us to shine, but not how to sit in the dark and rebuild. It doesn't praise the nights you cry yourself open, or the mornings you choose forgiveness when no one sees your struggle. But those are the sacred places, the hidden victories that shape you in ways no stage ever could. When no one's watching, you begin asking new questions. Not, how do I look? But how do I feel? Not, will they like me? But, do I even like myself? That shift changes everything. You stop chasing approval and start chasing peace. You stop seeking importance and start finding alignment. You build a life that feels good on the inside even if no one ever claps for it. And as you grow in that quiet, you begin to carry a different kind of presence. One that cannot be faked. You don't need to be noticed, you simply are. Because when you've explored the depths of your soul and made peace with what you found, you no longer need the world's permission to exist fully. You are not becoming for them, you are becoming for you. The irony is, once you no longer need to be seen, people see you more clearly. Once you stop asking for validation, your calm becomes magnetic. You don't speak louder, yet your words carry more meaning. You don't show off your healing, but it radiates from you naturally. That's the quiet reward of true transformation. It shows even when you're not trying. Let the world forget you for a while. Let its attention drift elsewhere. Use that space not for fear, but for depth, for rebuilding, for redefining. Because the strongest version of you won't need anyone to look first. You'll stand so whole, so steady, so true that your presence will speak louder than any spotlight. Let them wonder where you went. Let them whisper about your silence. Let them watch as you rise. Not with noise or spectacle, but with a stillness so deep it commands the room. You don't need to be seen to be growing. You don't need to be loud to be heard. Focus on yourself. Stay with God. Stay silent.